Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Broman Clash, and today I want to talk about a topic about a subject that actually had its 44th birthday yesterday. Basically around like this, yeah, like a year younger than a year older than my dad. But the topic I want to talk about is the topic of hip hop, and the elements of hip hop. It as a subculture, then eventually becoming very significant in the world. And how does it tie into what's going on nowadays? Well, maybe not nowadays, but how it affected people, not only as a genre, but as a culture. But let's talk about the history of hip hop. See, hip hop started in the Bronx, particularly in South Bronx, and it started by a man by the name of DJ Kool Herc, a Jamaican DJ artist. It wasn't well. DJ really stands for disc jockey, and he would mix like two songs together, and he would make sure that one song would play longer than the other, thus creating a bit of a beat. Then there was Grandmaster Flash, who helped create the turntables. Yes, Grandmaster Flash. Grandmaster Flash and Furious Five. The Message, Dreaming, White Lines, Don't Do It, which was an anti-drug song, and it was considerably socially conscious. Yes, there's that. Then you had, a myriad of other people who basically made the culture into what it is today. Some notable names would be, MC Shan, Molly Mall, KRS One, Africa Bambaataa, of course DJ Kool Herc, and and I mentioned Melly Mel, the Grandmaster Flash, Sha Rock, being one of the first female MCs, along with Roxanne Shante. And then speaking of Roxanne Shante and what I named the other people, some of them were a part of the Juice Crew. And hip hop has been well known for, a bit of his rap battles. And one of the more well known rap battles was actually the first one. This was back in 1981 at Harlem World. And that was the rap battle between Kool Moe Dee and Busy Bee. And that rap battle helped shape the whole genre, because now it's by lyrical content and by different style of beat. Yeah. Then after a while, then came the bridge battles, which were which was against South Bronx's Boogie Down Productions and Queensboro Bridges, the Juice Crew. Well, while there was no victor per se, even though Boogie Down Productions had more lyrical content and they had greater shots, but the Juice Crew definitely had more manpower, thus they had more of a versatility. There's that. But both sides gave a bit of their respects, and both of them gave a bit of their best. Gave their best. But particularly on the culture of hip hop. Basically there are four elements to hip hop. One, MCing. MC basically stands for Master of Ceremonies. And what do the Master of Ceremonies do? Basically they rhyme while the DJ plays the music, which I mentioned before, the DJ is the disc jockey. And they make sure and they keep the crowd going. Now, back in the days, hip hop was more like, how the way people sample nowadays? They just sample, sample, sample. That's how they did it back in the days. They had vinyl records. They put on one record, and they put in another record, and they have two records playing at the same time. And then they create like a new beat. Then they have scratch, and they have a bit of treble, bass, and then you got the party started. Then you got breakdancing or b-boying, b-girling, but breakdancing in general is for lack of a better terms, the dancing part of hip hop. You got the windmill, you got the slide, you got different kinds of moves that basically emphasize on like the street culture, and not only that, street culture of hip hop, especially during that time where people had to improvise. And people looked at hip hop as nothing but just a fad, anyways. Then The fourth part, which I do love, but I don't do, which is also a bit controversial, is graffiti art. But art in general is an expression of oneself. And if you belong to a crew, it's an expression of the whole group. So then, how does graffiti art tie into hip hop? Well then, to answer that question, graffiti art ties into hip hop because graffiti art allowed people to not only make drawings on walls, but also to show like a sense of history, like this is what happened. Here's who was there, here's what happened, here was the crew, and who was against who. And overall, it was a bit of a peaceful time. Well, aside from the crack epidemic, there was a bit of a heroin epidemic going on. And then, as hip hop evolved, it got more socially conscious. It got socially conscious, basically talking about the dangers of drugs, you know, watching out for fakes, watching out for cops, and eventually it's going to talk about like fuck the police and all that. Now, talking about the early years of hip hop, it was mainly about just having fun. As Africa Bambaataa once said, I understand that some of y'all have like little to no respect to Africa Bambaataa after what happened, but he was a significant part of hip hop. You gotta acknowledge him on that part. So then he said, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and having fun. Those were the four elements of hip hop. Well, the four key components. The four elements were, as I mentioned before, MCing, which basically stands for Master of Ceremonies, DJing, well, basically disc jockeys, breakdancing, and graffiti art. Then there's also the part of knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and having fun. But when you think about it, those are the core principles of hip hop right there in that form. But after a while, from like the late 70s, like the mid to late 70s to the early 80s, that's what's hip hop structure. Then going to like the mid 80s and not to late 80s, from like 1985 to 1989, you had like a bit of a how should I say, like hip hop had like a bit of a surge of social consciousness, which started from not only from the message, but also from White Lines. But you also got Boogie Down Productions talking about police brutality. You had Public Enemy, which were well known, especially for Fight the Power, especially from that line saying like motherfuck John Wayne and Elvis, because Elvis was considered to be a thief. Especially when he stole rock and roll from black folks. I mean, hey, can't forget about Chuck Berry. Then you got on the West Coast, which they were talking about, gang violence and what's going on over there, such as with Ice-T, NWA, Toddy T, and a few other MCs that were talking about that. Then coming back right now, like Dirty South rapping didn't happen until like the late 90s to early 2000s. That's when like Dirty South rapping was really on and going on, especially with like Outkast. That's the only notable one that I know of. But speaking on to like the socially conscious aspect of hip hop, which is the hip hop that I know of and the hip hop that I grew up with. Well, I was 12 years old. That was back in 2007. So I'm not a time traveler, y'all. No, I'm not. But basically, it talked about the messages of like, hey, let's stay together, keep it real. And then there was Biz Markie, and I think Biz Markie and the Juice Crew, and they made a song called "End Racism." He said, "The ink is black, the paper is white. Together we learn to read and write. There's people that are black, there's people that's white. So let's end racism so we can unite. That's Biz Markie, man. And I thought, and Biz Markie was a part of the Juice Crew too. He was, some people call him the clown prince of hip hop, but if you ask me, excellent MC. Give him credit when credit is due. But when you deal with hip hop, you also gotta talk about some of the good and some of the bad. I talk about some of the good in hip hop. Let's talk about a bit like the neutral aspect, such as quote unquote gangster rap. Gangster rap was really, I remember Eddie Griffin said it well. Gangster rap is a bit of a contradiction because, matter of fact, it's an oxymoron because the first code of being a gangster is the fact that you stay silent. And in hip hop, you tell what the hell is going on. But really, gangster rap was nothing more than just a show. But it did show off, the street life, what was going on, especially the violence, drug use, prostitution. And it exposes, the life of the, as they would say, the little man or the common man, a man like me. And don't worry, I don't do drugs. I don't sell drugs. That's not what I'm trying to say. But basically, a commoner, as those posh, high, uppity motherfuckers would say. But basically, gangster rap talked about just the street life or the common life that they would see. And some notable examples would be Tupac, Ice-T, Biggie Smalls, Wu-Tang Clan. Well, Wu-Tang Clan is not really much of a gangster rap group. They talk about martial arts, but yet they did talk about the life and times of common people, of people who lived out on the street. Basically poor people. Talking about this goes out to that dude drive-bys. Basically how can it be all so simple? That's one of their songs. And then, you have Nas. You have a myriad of other MCs that would talk about these subjects. And then as hip-hop went through that phase, it became much more grittier. It became much more, like the beats became much more heavier. It was just like, man, these beats are hard. And then you got female MCs such as MC Lyte, Queen Latifah, Yo-Yo, Lady of Rage. Oh man, those Nonchalant. And then there were others that I know of too, but I forgot them. Sorry to the female MCs that actually did partake and actually did have significant contributions, such as Salt and Pepper and DJ Spinnerella. It's just that I haven't really heard many of you, but you are significant to the culture. Don't get me wrong. And that's just how it is. And some of the female MCs could spit harder than the male MCs. And that's the truth. Then let's get on to the bad part of hip hop, which is not even really hip hop. It's this commercial bullshit that you call, it's commercialized. Like, there's nothing wrong with, obtaining money, obtaining wealth, obtaining, make sure you have, resources for future generations to have. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, look at Run DMC. Look at Nas. Look at some of the Wu-Tang men. Look at some of the Wu-Tang members. Some of them are even professors. Look at some of the other hip-hop artists. They want to make sure that their family survive. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. But, excuse me. But when you deal with commercialized hip hop, basically, you got Lil Wayne, T-Pain, Lil Uzi Vert. Well, I don't really listen to their music, so they all sound the same. As Snoop Dogg gonna say, I'm like, man, all those motherfuckers sound the same to me, man. Man, cut that shit off. I'm quoting Snoop Dogg on that one. That's what he did. Yeah, Snoop Dogg, his name's Snoop Lion. He lying about quitting about smoking. Let's keep it real. Nah, I'm just kidding. But you gotta give credit to Snoop Dogg too. He was significant in the West Coast as well, along with Cypress Hill, NWA's, Ice Cube, and Dr. Dre, along with Eazy-E and MC Ren and DJ Yella. Let's not forget about them. But then, as I'm going to talk about, because commercialized hip hop, it basically took out all the other elements that made hip hop unique, such as, breakdancing, being socially conscious, talking about what's actually going on. And not only that, it basically insinuated on basically having fun to the highest degree, to the point it's actually pretty sad. Paul Mooney said it well. Basically, our people learn how to have fun to the point that it's actually sad, to the point that we just want to escape. Now, how does this tie into hip hop? If this is the bad part of hip hop, see, just like there's a good side to a person, a bad side to a person. Just like there's a good side to a culture and a bad side to a culture. Well, you gotta talk about the bad side of hip hop. Basically, hip hop, it's not really hip hop nowadays. It's because before it was about who was more unique, who did you go with. Basically everybody had like a certain sound that people resonated towards. Now it's just that it sounds the same. While, don't get me wrong, there are female MCs out there who can rock the mic better than male MCs. But still, they still sound the same as their male counterparts. And that's the thing that really bothers me. Because it doesn't really sound, different. It doesn't really sound like hip hop. In fact, it's just commercialized bullshit. Basically, corporations are getting more money than the rappers do. I mean, come on, let's keep it real. It's not like it's a lie. And then you also got to take into account that there's also the fact that hip hop nowadays, it's not really hip hop, because it seems as if like rappers nowadays are afraid to talk about socially conscious stuff because they're afraid that their pay is going to be revoked. Basically, it's not even hip hop; it's slave hop. Basically, the masses just telling them, "Hey there, boy," or "Hey there, little girl. You wants to jump for me? I'll give you 10 million if you do, but I want you to jump a certain way. I don't want you to jump how the way they did back in the 80s and 90s now. I want you to jump my way, or else you ain't gonna get this money now here." And they say, "Yes, sir. I'll do that, sir." That's basically hip hop nowadays. Yeah, basically hip hop went from like being in poverty to talking about the social constructs of what makes up poverty, to talking about a false dream, to being just enslaved all over again. But then, how does all this tie in to the culture? Well, not only the culture has roots in Africa, and don't get me wrong, this is going to be a great segue into why is it important for us as a people, especially black folks, to actually have a culture, because it gives us an identity. You know how, like, in my previous video, I talked about Black History Month and how if you don't have like a month for yourself, or at least like some sort of remembrance of who you are, you're gonna feel irrelevant. Well then, that's what hip hop does. It gives us a sense of relevancy that makes us feel like, yeah, this is our culture. This is what we made. This is a part of the streets. You may not like it, you may not understand it, but this is us, and we love it. And if you got a problem with it, then that is your problem. But then again, what's the point? What's the point? People are just going to try to exploit a culture because they see it's profitable. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand that you want to make some money. I understand that you got to make sure that your family's fed. That's an admirable, a way of thinking, and I admire that. But if your greed exceeds your need, then what can you succeed? or as they would say right then and there, bars. Nah, man, I'm just kidding around. But take it, but get a message out of that. You want to understand something. And then, I want to talk about like the background of hip hop, like what inspired hip hop, and now, like what ties hip hop all together. Basically, it had some roots in Africa, especially with dancing and the beat of the drums, and then there was also Jamaican dancehall music. Yes, Jamaican dancehall music, the very same music, like Jamaican, reggae, dancehall, and ska that inspired, like the skinhead culture. Yes, skinheads were inspired by, Jamaican ska music. Don't get me wrong. This is about hip hop, but just to give you a bit of a heads up. So basically, being a skinhead doesn't necessarily make you racist, but being a white nationalist does. But then, all that coming in together, you actually have like a bit of a culture of a culture of a culture. So basically, it still goes back to Africa. Then, as time goes on, either you remember the identity or you forget about the identity. That's the thing that really hits me hard. And when you forget about yourself, you ultimately forget about who you are. And hip hop not only is a culture, but is an identity. And if you forget about your identity, then are you really who you are? Are you what others say you are? Have you ever thought of that? So, in essence, hip hop is more than just commercial. It's more than just a poster. It's more than just, overall, what you see on TV. It's more than just breast bouncing, booty shaking, pants sagging, six pack and all that, man. Let me tell you something. Biz Markie is a big black man, and there were the Fat Boys, and they could rock the party too. And not only that, don't let commercialized bullshit tell you what a music genre is, especially what hip hop is. Because hip hop is more than just a genre. It is a culture. It is an identity. And without an identity, who are you? Are you a slave? Or are you a free man? Because as Frederick Douglass once said, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. And if you have knowledge of self, health, and wealth, guess what? You're a man. Woman, human, you catch my drift. You're a person, nonetheless. And that's what hip-hop's all about. And with that, YouTube, this is Bromac Lash saying I one. Hope you have a good day today. Later. Respect, y'all. Peace.